Hey, what's up, y'all? What's happening? It's X again, and I want to make this video about the Brooklyn Nets. So, as of recently, they lost 4 of the last 5. They lost a game against Portland, they lost 2 games in Milwaukee, and more recently, they lost 1 in Dallas. They did, however, won 3 in a row after losing the last 4. But even with their most recent win against the Denver Nuggets, there is a lot of glaring problems with this Brooklyn Nets team. And I would like to address 2 of the main issues that I see with Brooklyn. So the most glaring issue that everybody and their mother sees is their defense. God, Brooklyn has been very inconsistent and very piss poor on defense this season. Currently, the Brooklyn Nets are ranked number 23 in defensive efficiency. One of the main problems on that end is that they don't have a defensive monster or a defensive force down low. While DeAndre Jordan is still a serviceable defender, he can only do so much at the age of 32, and he has a habit of being a really bad help defender. One-on-one, he's alright, but DeAndre is not the same all-defensive guy he once was when he had Chris Paul on the LA Clippers. They have really good defenders though. They do have Bruce Brown, they do have Nick Claxton, they have a really solid veteran in Jeff Green. Kevin Durant can still defend even after that Achilles injury, even though he looks a step slow on that end. James Harden is becoming a much improved defender, but even still, this team does not have a defensive-minded identity. And that could be something that ends up hurting the Brooklyn Nets in the long run. Looking back on previous championship teams like the 2020 Lakers, the 2019 Raptors, the Warriors from years past, the Big Three Miami Heat, ironically with LeBron James, the San Antonio Spurs, the 08 Celtics team, 04 Pistons, etc., etc., etc. Not only they had a great offense, but they were able to balance it out with a great defensive philosophy and or system. The fact that Brooklyn relies on offense so much to a point where they be like, defense, is that your cousin DeMar? Yeah, bad joke on Drake in the NBA awards from a few years ago. Man, that felt like a lifetime ago though. But no, seriously, they rely so much on offense to a point where they just completely disregard any defensive schematics, despite the fact they have really good defenders in Bruce Brown, Jeff Green, and Nick Claxton, etc. And it could expose a lot of holes in their game plan, and Steve Nash should consider making adjustments when it comes to that. And the last thing a contender wants to do is not have a defensive game plan, and when they are struggling on the offensive end, they don't have good defense to back it up. To put it into context, y'all, in the 2 games versus Milwaukee and their recent loss against Dallas, their defense got shredded every single time to a point both Giannis and Luka got open for shots underneath the basket, or having players like Drew Holiday, or in the case of Dallas, Dwight Powell and Tim Hardaway Jr. getting open for shots. So their defense got shredded every single time to a point where the defense has to collapse on the guy who's driving, in the case of both Giannis and Luka, and they would kick it out to shooters, whether it's Chris Middleton or Tim Hardaway Jr. It really exposed how bad the Brooklyn Nets defense has been all season, especially since they traded all their pieces like Taurean Prince and Jarrett Allen in order to get James Harden. And this is what I'm talking about when I say Steve Nash needs to make adjustments when it comes to the defensive end, especially if Brooklyn's offense isn't working that particularly well. I do believe Steve Nash can make adjustments defensively. Now, don't get me wrong, Steve Nash is a great coach. Well, he's a really good coach, but he has a really great basketball mind. So this is not me saying that I should be coaching, not Steve Nash or whatever. But one of the adjustments I believe he can make are giving guys like Bruce Brown, Jeff Green, and Nick Claxton a lot more minutes. Now, should they be starting over guys like Joe Harris? No, because Joe Harris has been a starter. Definitely, I do think one of them should be starting over Blake Griffin for sure. And then you can have Blake come off the bench, because Blake, he's been, I guess he's been okay defensively, but he's still a liability. And it doesn't help that he's been injured for like most of his career. But giving guys like Bruce Brown, Jeff Green, and Claxton more minutes can give you a lot more options defensively, and your defense would look a whole lot better. Now, that's not a knock on the Big Three, because like I said, James Harden is an improving defender. KD, even though he's a step slow, he can clamp up where he needs to, and Kyrie can be a good defender when he needs to. But what I'm pretty positive of is that teams are going to expose both Kyrie Irving and Joe Harris in the pick and roll, because Joe Harris he's okay defensively. Kyrie is not all that great defensively, but he'll clamp up when he needs to. And I do believe that Nash will make those adjustments, especially since James Harden is coming back. But if they don't make those adjustments, their defense will be their downfall. But one glaring issue that a lot of people are also seeing is their health. Now, obviously, every team has to deal with health and safety protocols with the virus, as well as this season being a really bad injury-plagued season. Every team superstar has either been injured, and this is a side tangent, by the way. Klay Thompson was the first domino to fall when it came to a lot of players getting injured, and then you had big stars like LeBron and AD suffering their injuries and all that. But not only I want to talk about the health of the Brooklyn Nets, I also want to talk about how their fit and chemistry could go. And there are a lot of people that are saying while they do have a winning percentage, they only played 7 games together, and that is a cause for concern because by the time it's the postseason, it could be somewhat of an awkward fit because I think Dwayne Wade said best that they could be on the same page mentally, but physically and fit-wise and on the court, could they really mesh? Like I said, I will get to that at the tail end of the video, but let's talk about the health of the Brooklyn Nets. So, like I said, they only played 7 games together, and their last game was against the Warriors in February when all 3 are healthy. Since then, Brooklyn has suffered a plethora of injuries, starting with Kevin Durant and him dealing with a hamstring injury. James Harden has also dealt with a hamstring injury, and both their injuries kept him out for multiple games for like a couple months. And the game before James Harden's return, Nikola Vucevic elbowed Kyrie Irving in the face, and now Kyrie's out with a facial contusion. Oh yeah, and I also forgot to mention Spencer Dinwiddie, who suffered a torn ACL, but he's rumored to be back before the playoffs start or when the playoffs start. But as of now, he is ruled out for the season. And now Joe Harris has a hip injury. I mean, this team has suffered a whole lot of injuries, and sometimes that can derail a team's chemistry. Especially with the big 3, because like I said, they only played 7 games, with their last game being February 13th, I think, against the Warriors. And only 2 of the big 3 members have been healthy. But I will say this, when this team is healthy, they are a hard team to beat in the playoffs. And arguably, they are a legit contender for the NBA championship this year. But that is the thing, though. The thing about it is, can they stay healthy? And if they are healthy, how they're going to translate on the court, because, you know, the 7 games only being played together is not really common for a big 3 that is considered a title contender. And the Flight Mike pointed this out. Now, I know the Flight Mike is not the most reliable basketball source in the world. That's usually B Souls and Kane Faria and Rusty Buckets. I don't remember which particular video, but one point he did make about the Brooklyn Nets in one of his videos that he talked about them is that the big 3 usually have to play 40 to 60% of their games. The Brooklyn Nets only played 7 out of 72 games. And if you divide 7 by 72, that literally rounds off to 1%. See, I'm a goddamn mathematician, bro. Put me in the freaking mathematics B or whatever. But anyways, their injuries have plagued them the entire season, which is a cause for concern, especially since the play-in tournament will be in 4 days. But for the Brooklyn Nets, the playoffs start in about a week from now. And it's most important that the big 3 stay healthy and not suffer another injury, because the last thing they want is not even just a member of the big 3. Some of their key pieces like Bruce Brown, Jeff Green, and Blake Griffin, all 3 of them, and even Claxton, for example, and this dude named Mike James that they signed. Basically, their complementary players to the big 3 also have to stay healthy, because they will serve an important part in the Nets rotation. And the last thing Brooklyn needs is another player injured. And while yes, the Brooklyn Nets have not played enough games together with their big 3, they still have 2 of the top players in the league in both Harden and Kevin Durant. And then you have Kyrie Irving, who is probably considered one of the best point guards in the NBA. And the fact that when they play together, they look really nice and they're on the same page. And even without their big 3, they are still considered a really good team, or even a great team, or even a championship team. But they do need all their members to stay healthy, and I really do hope Kyrie Irving comes back, so that way we can get to see the Nets' big 3 in action. But even then, their team relies on solely outscoring opponents rather than preventing said opponents from scoring, which is a problem I already addressed. And let's be real, y'all, Mike D'Antoni is currently the assistant coach for the Brooklyn Nets. And for the past 4 years before that job, he was the head coach for the Houston Rockets when James Harden was still on the team. And even within those past 4 years, when they did have guys like Trevor Ariza and PJ Tucker and to a certain extent Clint Capella, Those teams' philosophies were just simply a run and gun offense and rely on the individual brilliances of James Harden, Chris Paul, and last season Russell Westbrook. So Mike D'Antoni may have something to do with the Brooklyn Nets not being as great defensively as they should be. But like I said, I do believe that issue of their game can be fixed because they have a good amount of defensive personnel on their team, like the three I just discussed earlier with Bruce Brown, Nick Claxton, and Jeff Green. And most importantly, if the Nets ain't healthy, man, they ain't winning diddly squat. But yeah, that is my take on the biggest flaws about the Brooklyn Nets, which are basically two, maybe three flaws if you count the offense. I hope y'all enjoyed the video, man. I was supposed to release this a few days ago, but I've been like really tied up with school and it's finals week and all that. And originally I want to make two quick videos about the Charlotte Hornets and the Chicago Bulls, but those two videos are on hold and I'm saving them for after the season because I do want to focus on the playoffs and the playoff teams as well as the play-in tournament. But yeah, bro, series recap cannot come soon enough. And I'm really excited to do that series. Hopefully I can release the series or episodes of the series on time. If not, that's just me being tied up because, you know, your boy looking for a job, before he gets his YouTube career going. You know what I'm saying? But anyways, until all that happens, that's the end of this video. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. I forgot to mention that in the video. I'm not even close to 50 subscribers actually. So if you can share this video and tell your friends about me and have them subscribe to me, that would be great. But that's going to cap it off, man. As usual, that's the end of this video. I'm X. Deuces.